They commanded millions of men, controlled entire theaters of war, and shaped the course of the 20th century. But when the briefings ended and the maps were rolled up, each of these men carried one small weapon on their person. Not a tank, not an artillery piece, a pistol, and the choices they made, or in some cases refused to make, reveal something surprising about who these men really were. Today we are looking at the personal sidearm of the top German commanders of World War II, the weapons they chose, the stories behind those choices, and in one extraordinary case, even the gun that ended the entire war. There is something the history books rarely tell you about German officers in World War II. While the average German soldier carried the Carabinier 98K, a powerful, reliable bolt-action rifle, the men who gave those soldiers their orders were expected to carry something far smaller, something that fit in a coat pocket or a custom-sewn holster hidden inside the uniform. The rule of thumb, as one German foreign veteran put it, was simple: the higher the rank, the smaller the pistol. Generals didn't carry weapons to fight, they carried them as a symbol, as a last resort, and sometimes, as we will see, as a statement about their own character. Let us start with the most important weapon of all. Adolf Hitler was technically the supreme commander of the Wehrmacht, so calling him a general is a stretch. He never rose above the rank of corporal in World War I, but no list of German wartime sidearms begins anywhere other than with the Führer himself. Hitler carried a Walther PPK chambered in a 7.65mm, also known as 32 ACP. This is a small, genuinely small, comparable in stopping power to a 22 long rifle round. For the man commanding the most powerful army on earth, it was by any objective measure a deeply underpowered choice, but Hitler had a specific reason for the PPK. He had a pocket sewn directly into his trousers, where he kept it all the time. He concealed from view. He also kept a larger Walther PP in a shoulder holster under his jacket. The man was terrified of assassination, and he had good reason to be. There were at least 42 documented attempts on his life during his lifetime. The PPK was not a fighting weapon, it was a last-ditch option. As it turned out, it was the last weapon he ever touched. On the 30th of April 1945, with Soviet troops less than 500 meters from the Führer bunker in Berlin, Hitler used that PPK to end his own life. The pistol disappeared into the chaos of the final days of Berlin. Soviet forces reportedly recovered it, and there are accounts that it sat on Stalin's personal desk for years afterward. To this day, its exact location is unknown. Now let us turn to the military professionals, the men who actually ran the campaign. Erwin Rommel is perhaps the most famous German commander of the war, known to both sides as the Desert Fox. He commanded the Afrika Corps across the burning sands of North Africa, and his tactics were so admired that Allied commanders reportedly studied his manual on infantry attacks as a training text. Rommel was not a man who liked unnecessary complexity. He dressed simply, lived simply, and his choices of sidearm reflected that. Rommel carried the Walther P38, the standard Wehrmacht service pistol, not a custom weapon, not an engraved presentation piece, not a trophy, the same gun issued to junior officers and non-commissioned officers across the German army. For a field marshal, this was an unusual choice. Most senior commanders gravitated toward smaller, more discreet weapons as a reflection of their rank. Rommel chose practicality. The P38 was a solid double-action pistol, chambered in 9mm parabellum, holding 8 rounds, reliable in desert conditions and fast to draw. It suited a man who was personally leading tank charges from the front and once found himself accidentally driving into a British convoy in the dark in North Africa. Rommel's story didn't end in battle. In July of 1944, he was seriously wounded when Allied aircraft strafed his staff car in France. He was recovering at home when the Gestapo came to his door. Implicated in the July 20th plot to assassinate Hitler, Rommel was given a choice: face a public trial and bring disgrace to his family, or take a cyanide capsule and be given a state funeral as a hero. He chose the capsule. His sidearm outlasted him. Hermann Göring was the complete opposite of Rommel. In almost every way, Göring was flamboyant, extravagant, and addicted to excess. The commander-in-chief of the Luftwaffe collected art castles, medals, and uniforms at a scale that astonished even his fellow Nazis. So what did this man carry? An American revolver, specifically a Smith & Wesson military and police model, produced in 1934 with a 4-inch barrel purchased by Göring at a Hamburg gun shop before the war, while his colleagues carried sleek German automatics. Walters, Lugers, P-38s, the second most powerful man in Nazi Germany, carried a foreign revolver. It tells you something about Göring. He didn't follow conventions. He could not be easily categorized. When American forces captured him near Rastatt, Austria, on the 8th of May 1945, Göring surrendered his sidearm ceremoniously. But here is where it gets pretty interesting. The weapon he handed over in that famous surrender photograph was not the Smith & Wesson. It was custom engraved gold-plated Walther PPK in a red velvet lined case. Göring reportedly owned several such presentation pistols. The Smith & Wesson was his personal carry weapon. The gold PPK was theater. Even in surrender, Göring was performing. Sepp Dietrich was a different kind of commander entirely. Before the war, he had been Hitler's personal bodyguard, a British street-fighting loyalist from the early days of the Nazi movement. He rose to command the 1st SS Panzer Division and later the 6th SS Panzer Army. Though elite commanders noted his tactical abilities were considerably less impressive than his rank suggested, when American forces captured Dietrich in May of 1945, he was carrying a Sauer 38H. I think I pronounced it right, Sauer. This is a fascinating choice because the Sauer 38H was one of the most mechanically advanced pistols of its era. Compact double action designed with an internal hammer and a unique coking and decoking lever that allowed the soldier to safely carry the weapon loaded without worrying about an accidental discharge. It was elegant technology in the hands of a man not known for elegance. Dietrich was later convicted at the Malmedy massacre trial for his role in the killing of American prisoners of war during the Battle of the Bulge. The Sauer 38H that he surrendered with is today a historical artifact. The man who carried it is remembered rather differently. Joachim Peiper was the youngest division commander in the Waffen-SS, a man whose personal courage in combat was matched only by his ruthlessness of the battlefield. He was charismatic, intelligent, and feared. He was also directly responsible for the Malmedy massacre, the killing of 84 American prisoners of war in December of 1944. Peiper carried a Browning high-power, the Belgian-designed 13-round 9mm pistol that was paradoxically one of the most widely carried weapons by both Allied and Axis forces during the war. The Belgians had designed it before the war. The German has occupied the factory and continued producing it for their own forces. The Browning high power held nearly double the ammunition of a standard German service pistol, which suited a man who was often operating deep in contested territory with limited backup. Peiper survived the war, was convicted of war crimes, sentenced to death, had the sentence commuted, and was released in 1956. He moved to France under an assumed name. In the summer of 1976, his identity was revealed in a French newspaper. That same night, his house was firebombed. Peiper died in the flames. The weapon he had carried through the war was long gone by then. Now we come to a man who carried his weapon not to defend the Reich, but to try to destroy it. Klaus von Stauffenberg was a colonel, not a general, but he belongs in this list because his sidearm is inseparable from the most famous assassination attempt in history. Von Stauffenberg was an aristocrat, a decorated war hero, and a man who had been catastrophically wounded in Tunisia in 1943, losing his right hand, 2 fingers on his left hand, and his left eye. With only 3 functioning fingers remaining, he needed a weapon he could operate with one hand. He chose a Browning high power, the same Belgian pistol that Peiper carried. By pressing the slide against the edge of a table, he could rack and chamber around using his left hand alone. On the 20th of July 1944, von Stauffenberg carried that high power into the Wolf-Leyer, Hitler's field headquarters in East Prussia, along with a briefcase containing the 2 small bombs. He placed the briefcase under the conference table, excused himself, and walked out. The bomb detonated, but another officer had moved the briefcase behind the heavy leg of the conference table. Shielding Hitler from the blast, Hitler survived. Von Stauffenberg flew back to Berlin to activate the coup, When it failed, he and his co-conspirators were arrested after a brief firefight in which he was shot in the shoulder. He was executed by a firing squad that same night in the courtyard of the Bendler block headquarters. He was 36 years old. The Browning high power he had carried was taken from him. It has never been publicly located. Heinrich Himmler commanded not an army, but a state within a state. As head of the SS, he controlled the concentration camps, the Gestapo, the intelligence apparatus, and ultimately the machinery of the Holocaust. He carried a Walther PP, the slightly larger predecessor to PPK, chambered in 7.65mm. The PP was the most common sidearm among senior Nazi party officials and Gestapo officers. It was compact enough to conceal, but larger than the PPK, with a slightly better trigger, marginally more stopping power. Photographs exist of Himmler firing a Luger pistol left-handed, reportedly because he encouraged his subordinates to practice shooting with their weak hand, but the PP was his carry weapon. Himmler attempted to flee Germany at the end of the war in disguise, using forged papers. He was captured by British forces on the 22nd of May 1945. During a medical examination, he bit down on a cyanide capsule hidden in his mouth and died within minutes. His Walther PP was confiscated by British forces. Like so many of the weapons in this story, it disappeared into the fog of the post-war years. Which brings us to a final thought. These weapons were, by the standards of the war, almost insignificant. They fired small cartridges, they held few rounds, they were designed not for battle, but for last resorts, for status, for the rare moment when a general found himself without his army. And yet, the stories attached to the pistols are some of the most consequential moments of the 20th century. One killed the most destructive political leader in modern history. One was carried into an assassination attempt that, had it succeeded, might have ended the war a year earlier. One was handed over in a theatrical surrender that became an iconic photograph. The weapons themselves were small, the history they carry is not. If you found this breakdown valuable, hit subscribe. We cover the weapons, equipment, and untold stories of World War II every week. Let us know in the comments which of these sidearms surprised you the most.